a part of my corporate dreams and my, feelings of moving up in the ranks and things like that. I feel like I kind of left that at the hospital. You're ready. You're more than ready to start accepting clients by the time you're done with the course. So I don't believe, I get this question a lot is, should I start off cheaper? Should I offer one for free? No.
No.
The quickest way to lose a client or to get a bad perception
Mm-hmm.
is unmet expectations.
Transaction Care, the podcast. Welcome home to the number one real estate show on the market. I am your host and resident care coordinator, Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily. My goal with each episode of Transaction Care is to demystify the business of real estate from my point of view and interviews from other voices within the real estate industry around the world. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Welcome back to the Transaction Care podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. She is the owner of Time Freedom TC. She is the fierce leader of the Work From Anywhere movement, and she also has her own courses, the TC Playbook, focused on helping women launch their TC businesses in 5 weeks without overwhelm. So I love this already. And everyone, please welcome Courtney Rozier to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Courtney, again. I appreciate your time and the space to just share your journey with all of us here and how you got into this crazy real estate world. I've been following your journey online, so it was a must that I had you on the podcast. So let's just jump right in it. You've been working in the real estate industry since 2015, correct? And you launched your TC business in 2018. So before all of that, what was your mindset in terms of, now I'm doing this, but now I'm going to work in real estate, but not just work in real estate, but I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So
Right.
How did you get there? Let's talk about that. Let's backtrack a little bit as far as you want to go and what you're willing to share with our audience today.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you so much for having me here. I think what you're doing is great with this podcast. Transaction coordinators, any industry or any field inside the real estate industry, other than sales, doesn't get that much shine. So thank you again for having me. I tell this story a lot about what kind of catapulted me into real estate. My career choice for over a decade was property management. So I've always been in real estate.
Right.
I'm from Chicago originally, and I moved to Atlanta in 2000. And when I moved here, back then, temp agencies and placement agencies, they really did a good job of placing. So I originally got placed working for a commercial real estate company managing an office building. I wasn't the property manager, obviously, at that time, but I moved up in the ranks over 10 years into senior management role and really loved my job. I loved everything about it. I learned something new all the time. It's different from working residential real estate because you're not dealing with somebody's house. You're just dealing with them for their office.
Right.
They had, if I got complaints, it wasn't like a major catastrophic type of situation. I won many awards, Building of the Year awards, things like that. I really loved what I did. I was what I can call myself a corporate bae.
Okay. I love that.
A young minority woman that worked really hard to get things done. We had budget seasons, and that was a very grueling time. I would say most of my positions in that career, my boss would be an out-of-town boss. So when he would come to town, obviously he would want to take the staff out for drinks or, it was always, and I was always available, single and just, hardworking young professional. And that is until I met my husband in 2000. When was this? 2011.
Okay.
That we fell in love. Next thing I know, girl, I was pregnant. And then that same week, I got laid off.
Oh,
for the very
wow.
first time in my life. And it was like 3 days before Christmas. And so I got pregnant, got laid off, and then that same week, that Friday, found out they were twins.
Oh my, from 0 to 100 real
Yes,
quick.
immediately. So it was crazy. And so during that time, I have a mentality, like I said, I was very hardworking, have been since I was a teenager. Like I always wanted my own money. I always, excelled, always found a good job, quote
Yes.
unquote. And so immediately I'm like, I told my job at the time, like, they gave me a severance, which was great. And then I also asked them if I could still be a part of our organization. It was called BOMA, which is Building Owner Office Managers Association or something like that. So that I could still like go to networking events to try to land a new job. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah, so after a couple of months, I did land a job. Um, and they called and offered me the job. And that same day, I had a doctor's appointment and I had something going on, some newfound issue with my heart because of pregnancy. Who knew
No.
you could
Yeah.
have all this, your body doing crazy stuff?
Right.
And they put me on bed rest that day. So I was like 18 weeks pregnant. And so they said, the doctor was like, no, ma'am, you can't accept the job. You're going to be on bed rest for the duration. Just because it's high risk. And at the time, I was what they considered geriatric, even though I was 32 or 33 years old.
Interesting.
That's considered old when you're trying to have a baby,
True.
especially twins. So, so I couldn't take the job. So then it's like, fine, okay, what is this guy trying to tell me? So I'm
Right.
at home. I'm like, okay, I can't get a job. Luckily, I had the severance. Just sit down and chill. And that's what I did. And like by 25 weeks, I was not only on bed rest, I was on hospital bed rest.
Oh, wow.
And that was for the duration. So I had them 10 and a half weeks later at 36 weeks, which is full term for twins. And during that time, I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted my life to be and what it actually meant to actually be pregnant and what that's going to look like when they come. Like, you don't really
Right.
have
We
time
don't
to
get
think
it,
about that
exactly.
when
We don't give ourselves enough time and space to process and self-reflect
right.
and
And
even
I wouldn't
feel the
have,
fact that, oh wow, I was just laid off, but now I have this time and opportunity, or I'm just supposed to be a vessel for these babies at this time. And it's
and
important to listen.
I had to come to grips with that because it's like, okay, what, I gotta, but I followed doctor's orders. I really did sit there, but mentally, had I, just quickly tried to get a job and go back to work and stuff
Mhm.
like that, I would not have been able to really plan out what I really wanted for my life. So I feel like during that time, I had a strong feeling that, I want to be present for my kids and for my
Yeah.
family. Like I want to be available for them and things like that. So I mean, even during that time, though, I still hadn't really fully gotten on board with being a full-time entrepreneur. Like over the years prior to that, I've had snow cone trucks and, like
Wow.
I'm entrepreneurial, but I'm also a Virgo. So I feel like I'm very
It's
much
not perfect. It can.
right. Well, also though, very much need stability. Like, I
Yes.
didn't really depend, to feel like I could depend on myself to just 100% provide
Right. Right.
or a business. Queen of side hustles, full time, I don't know. And so fine, had the babies, when I left out, I feel like a part of my corporate dreams and my, feelings of moving up in the ranks and things like that. I feel like I kind of left that at the hospital. And
Mm.
so, yeah, and so
You not only birthed twins, but you rebirthed yourself in a sense.
exactly because after that, again, when the twins were like maybe 3 months, I'm like, okay, I need to get a job. It's time for me to go back to work. Just it's that ingrained in you
Right. Or
being raised
programming.
by a baby boomer. Like my kids probably will not have that kind of thought process. Like they
Right.
already are going to be record producers and like they're not thinking about like a job, like
Right.
how we were raised, to feel.
Exactly. Like location independence, time freedom is going to be normal for them.
Right.
You
And
know?
they had a chance to actually witness that from me as well.
Mhm.
So it's already ingrained. God didn't see it fit for me to find another job until they were 19 months.
Wow.
Not for lack of trying. I was trying, but I was lucky enough to be able to stay home. God still provided, for my
Mhm.
husband and I. So at 19 months, I went back to work, found a property management job. But I noticed there was a change. I didn't care about that job like that. Like, I did what I
Right.
had to do in the
It
parameter of time that I was there, but you will
was
not
like your
catch me coming late. You will not catch me coming early. You'll not catch me working through my lunch.
Mhm.
Like,
The old
no.
me is gone. The old me is gone.
Right.
I have more to look forward to my why
Yeah.
is stronger. Like,
I was just over it. And
mhm.
so like I stayed there a year and a half, but I I what I love about social media, especially Facebook, I guess I'm an old lady because I love Facebook, but
Facebook is a powerful tool still, especially for
it's
business entrepreneurs.
right. I don't use it as much for business. I still have that. I use it for business, but not as much because I still have like that's where my friends, my family, people that know me better are on there. And so I share a lot. I overshare a lot. And so over the years, even before business. And so I'm able to actually tell my students, like I'm actually go back and pinpoint what my mindset was during this time. So I have a post where I shared an article about balance and how can women balance work-life balance or family, being a mom, whatever, and being a strong, or not even entrepreneur, but just a business person or employee or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And in that, I had prefaced it with, I feel this way, and I remember ending it with my 5-year plan includes me working from home at least 3 days a week.
I love
That
it.
was, so I personally use Facebook. Like when I did the course and I'm able to talk about this with students and with people, I'm glad for the oversharing because
Mhm.
I've looked back now and I realize that Facebook becomes like my personal manifestation tool.
Right.
Like literally once it's out of my mouth,
It
like
becomes
even
so
before I met
real.
my husband, I was like, okay, I'm not going with the flow anymore. Yes, I do. I admit it. I want a man. And I promise, like a year later, all
There's
of this
something about just once you make up your mind and you're willing,
happened.
it's not even oversharing. It's just you are ready and you're making that statement to the world, to the universe. And if Facebook
Accountability almost. Yeah, too.
accountability, right? And if Facebook was the platform that it happened to be shared on,
Hmm.
there now you have concrete proof that no, I was ready on this
Yeah.
day at this time,
Yep. And I
actually.
love it. My personality is one. I love dated material. Like if you get me a birthday card, I want you to put in the corner what
Today,
year. Like I have this,
yeah,
like
I
put
can
the
relate to
year
that.
so that I can like be like, okay, man,
Very
that was way back
sentimental.
there. Yeah, I like that. So with Facebook, it gives me that exact timestamp. It gives me like what my mindset was and why. So my why became as I worked that job, that became my why. Like I need to be able to be home. I need a more flexible schedule so that I can be home when the kids get home from school. Like by this time, the kids were 3, gonna be starting pre-K the following year.
Okay.
So in my mind, I was saying like, okay, when they start school, I want to be able to be home, or I want to be able to go to field trips if I need to without the guilt.
Yes.
So, I don't want a male boss, asking me why, or, making me feel some kind of way
Not
for
understanding the value that one of my core values is my family. And
sex.
that quality time is really why. Like that is
Yeah,
it. That's the
that's
reason.
it.
Period. Can
That
you
was my
before we continue, I actually want to focus a little bit on the why part because I have this I call a TC launch checklist that at the very top of it is your why. And
hmm
I think it's important that we have a foundation that we build upon, much like a home. Home is nothing without a strong foundation. And did you always have a why, or was it in that moment later in your life where you're like, you know what, this is what feels right and I'm going to stick to it? And
I did not always have a why. The why was, I would say, when I said it out of my mouth what I wanted, which was the flexibility.
yes.
And then from there, the why then was the engine that motivated me to decide what it was I was going to do. So after I decided the why, I was like, what could I do that could give me the things that I want, that flexibility, that time freedom, that location.
I love that so much.
Yeah. And so that's how I came up with the real estate.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge, I love that you said that, because I've grown as an entrepreneur myself into kind of grown out of that mode of 9 to 5, get paid, that's my life, right? And then once you find yourself in entrepreneurship, you're constantly feeling like you're at the edge of a cliff. So you need that why to kind of reel you back in, to just ease your mind a little bit. When people ask me, well, how did you do it? Why did you do it? Or, how do you maintain? And as I have a similar timeline to you, as like I'm in my fifth year. I let people know exactly what you just said was, this is what I want, the flexibility, quality time with family. I value my location independence as well. How can I work around that? Versus you went straight for, this is how much I need to get paid, which yes is a factor, but it wasn't like the ultimate factor. And right. I think a lot of us tend to get disappointed or don't feel that passion with our jobs because I think we're not basing it around the right reasons, or our personalities or alignment. So the fact that you were using your prior experience within real estate, but instead of just jumping straight back into it, which you did try, right, still something's deflecting you, like, no, this isn't it. I need you to dig deeper. That's why you got that 19 months. You got that, you thought 3 weeks, I'm ready to jump back in it. But the universe, God was like, no, there's a bigger plan for you. And I need you to find that and stick to it. And these are your reasons. This is what I'm giving you to open that up for you. And I think I commend you for trusting that process as well, because it's not easy, especially when you do have 2 babies running, following you everywhere, depending on you, and the person you are naturally. Just, it's easy to just fall back into our old habits for the sake of quote unquote safety, right?
And I did. I mean, I will say,
right, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I feel like when there's a bigger purpose outside of that, you have to explore it.
And I don't think you realize that bigger purpose until you look back on it.
Of course.
So during the time, so it's like, what can I do? Real estate came up. I live in Atlanta, and I remember when I moved here in 2000. Back then, everybody had a real estate license, but back then everybody was flipping houses. So I have gone to real estate, school before while I was working. But I never, finished it because I really didn't have the vision at the time. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, well, that seems like the thing to do. Yeah. It wasn't anything, a why attached to it. So now it's like, okay, well, real estate, now this is I had my why, but my reason for real estate was really off base, because as a real estate agent, as you're starting your business for years, for some, you don't have a lot of time, the flexibility you think you have. Yes, you have flexibility, but it's not a work when you want to work or if you want to work.
No, it's a work. You have to work.
You have to work.
You are the business. You are the income. You are the janitor. You are the HR.
And so
I think that's a big misconception in real estate.
It is.
They think it's like, oh, big checks, commission.
Yeah, they think it's some kind of lick you hit. Like, they think it's like, it's a hustle.
Get your license and you get the check. No.
Yeah.
You got to make the call.
And it's more than the act of being a real estate agent. So it's more than a contract. It's more than showing houses, of course, but people think that that's all you do is show houses. It's not. It's more than even that, though, because separate from the doing, you are also a business owner. you have to understand business. And so many people get into it. And I mean, I'm not going to say I knew everything about business, but you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to research and then put into action what you're learning, or you wouldn't, like, you have to look at, okay, I know I don't want to do door knocking, but I need to try it once.
You have to try.
I know I don't want
What's
to.
going
You
to work
still have to do it, and you have to figure out what works for you. You can't just sit there and just think that business is going to come to you just because you say you're a real estate agent,
Right.
Especially in Atlanta where everybody's a real.
Just a quick break to remind you to go to transactioncarepodcast.com to join my TC community to receive weekly newsletters as well as exclusive announcements dedicated just to my community. So head to transactioncarepodcast.com and check out a few other episodes of this podcast if you haven't already. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
I put my all into, so I decided I was going to get my real estate license because I thought that real estate agents worked really hard in the spring, maybe in the summer, and then they had the winter off. I just thought it was.
This is the life.
I thought it was a lick, Mm-hmm. But I was like, this will give me what I need to, to get to my why, and it can. But I found that, I got started right away, lucked up, and like got a mentor who's now like one of my closest friends. But like at the time, like it just, the stars aligned for us to kind of work together. And so I was doing pretty well. Got my license in May of that year. And then all that summer I was working with her, kind of doing showings for her. And she was also mentoring me. And she kept trying to encourage me to quit my job. And I was like, I don't know, but by the time I quit, which was Halloween of that year, I had already had like deals in the pipeline. I had already closed maybe 2 or 3 deals. And then my boss said something sideways to me about me staying late. And I just like, I quit. I talked to my husband, of course. He was like, girl, quit. So I quit. Doing it that way, it was very nerve-wracking. I realized that, okay, I'm getting really ambitious with this though, as I do when I really like something and I really into it. But what I found was that in doing so, it took me further away from my why than a job ever did, than my corporate American job ever did. So because it's
that's like you go from a 9-to-5 to entrepreneurship, actually a 24/7.
Right. And the money, the checks are good. And so it's
of course.
Okay, I do want to do this, but it's not aligning with the purpose of doing it in the first place.
Exactly.
So as much as
for you, me, if it aligns for someone else, stick with it. Go for it.
Yeah. So like, my husband was looking at me sideways on Sundays, like, like
I'm never home.
Right. And so, so it was like, okay, now I have to sit back down again and really think about what I'm doing. So around the same time, my mentor, she's a top producing agent. And so as she's mentoring me, she's, teaching me about the contracts. We're talking about strategies, things like that. And somehow I had access to her emails. Like, I don't know how it happened, but she started to pay me to do her transactions. This is before we knew what a TC even was. I didn't know. I don't believe she did either, because she was only doing real estate maybe a couple of years before we met. Even though she was a top producing agent, she had always done everything herself, and it just wasn't as popular as it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
But she realized there was a right that needed to be filled.
I didn't give her a price. She just started paying me $350 per file, and it was good money because she was doing a lot of deals. And it was teaching. I enjoyed the teaching aspect of it. I enjoyed being a part of the deals and all of that. So that is how I actually morphed into the TC side. So I had been doing that for her, like starting around 2016, and exclusively working with her. And then around 2017, I did try to offer it to other agents, but I still hadn't completely solidified. Like, I hadn't set up my LLC. I hadn't really set up my systems like they are. until 2018. And so that's when I started Time Freedom TC. We talked a lot about time freedom, and that's what I offer to my agent clients is time freedom. Like everybody wants that. And so, yeah, so that's how it started. It was just for me kind of realigning my why from real estate sales. Now I still sell real estate. I do because I love it, but I'm not stressed about door knocking. I only work with referrals. So my referrals know that this is what I do. I still promote that, but not, it's just not such a stressful thing, especially with the changes in real estate and how cyclical it is. It's just nice to be able to have that and this going at the same time.
That's amazing. That's exactly why I felt a pulling towards creating a podcast like this, because there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of, one, entrepreneurship, two, real estate, which you covered from A to Z almost, like not just about the checks, like the journey to get that check. And then on top of that, you're still paying fees. You're still paying back any debt you may have accrued on the way up there. You have to factor in the future because you may not even get a check for another few months. And how does that operate? And then, as you transitioned into transaction coordination, even your body language changed as you were telling that story. It's like you perked up a bit, and like your why finally made sense. And I think that's important to factor in, is that our whys are so important, but they may not always make sense in the beginning. Like you said, it's going to take trial and error. You're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to take odd jobs that you didn't think you were interested in, but along that way, all those skills you take on will help push you along in this journey. So you mentioned that you did get your real estate license. How was that journey in terms of getting your license? Like, was it, because for me, I'll be honest, it took me 3 attempts. I didn't actually go take the test 3 times. I'm going to talk about this in a separate episode because it's not about me today. But just getting my mind in that mode of like, let's get serious. And once I made up my mind, I made a deal with myself. I respected my own journey and my commitments to myself. It's almost like everything just fell into place overnight. So how is the journey? And are you licensed anywhere else?
I'm not licensed anywhere else except for Georgia.
Okay.
For me, shockingly, because trust me, I don't feel like I'm you tell yourself these things and you believe it, but I'm not a good test taker. There was so much information.
Yes.
The real estate exam is not easy at all. And the hours that you need aren't easy. I remember I personally purposely did a class where I had to show up in class. I think it might have been 3 nights a week after work from like 6 to 10 or something like that. I did that because, but conversely, my husband, after I got my license, maybe a year or 2 later, he decided to get his license.
Oh, nice.
And he did a accelerated program. I still think he went there, but it was just 1 week. And so to me, that's a lot of information to get in 1 week. And he passed on his first try as well. I passed on my first try, but for the way that my brain works, I attributed it to me going to the class, the instructor saying, look, like the instructors aren't even really allowing too many outside questions and scenarios because they're like, look, this is what you need to know for the test, period.
Yeah.
Like, so they know how to teach to the test. And then I took a cram course that Sunday before the Wednesday that I took the test. And after the cram course, I'm like, I'm doomed. I'm not going to pass.
It's intimidating.
And it's just like, I just did not, it was so much information. And I was just like, the information from the cram course felt like it was new. It was just a lot. And somehow I passed. So, I don't really have any kind of tips on it because I really was like, not, because, you hear too, like your story is not uncommon. Like I didn't pass on the first try. It took me 2 or 3 times or more for some people.
Right.
So I was fully, I wasn't really that confident, to be honest. But, I do recommend to do it that way. And I guess what I learned was that even though it seems like the information is new, somehow all that information is in there. And once you see it on the test, maybe you'll get it. But the other thing too is that you learn when you talk to the instructors is that it's not whether or not you know the information, it's whether or not you're reading the question completely.
Yes.
So they formulate the questions in a way that can trick you. So like the right answer could be that could be in the choices, but they're not asking you for the right one. They're asking you for the one that doesn't apply. That's one trick. So then they taught us like how to underline certain things and look for certain words to kind of help you with that. Because a lot of times it's not that you didn't know the information, it's that you didn't read the question correctly.
That is great advice, because that's pretty much what happened to me. So it's important, if anyone out there is interested in getting their license, or maybe you have to renew your license and it's been a while since you've taken tests, read the questions through and through. I love that you knew what kind of accountability you needed for you, because like you said, even though your husband,
I can't do the online.
Yeah, everyone is built different.
People do it online, and I know that is not going to work for me in my learning style.
Exactly. So you just have to find what works best for you. For me, I like a mix of both. So for anyone out there looking to get their real estate license in any state or country, take your time, find what works best for you in terms of studying, and ask a lot of questions. I love that you spoke to your instructors. That's what they're there for. They're not just there to throw information at you. They're there to help you and guide you along the way. So I'm glad that you brought that up too. It's just utilizing help and asking for help. That's something I need to get better at, is asking for help and not being shy or embarrassed that I don't know something. Like, of course, you're a student. You're a student.
Right, exactly.
You already are exposing yourself to not knowing something. So why not?
When I tell you, like the students that I have that are not shy about worrying me to death, quote unquote, like they're not shy about
imposing.
I'm gonna ask these questions. I don't get this, or I'm gonna ask. Those are the ones that immediately upon finishing or before they're finished with the course,
on it,
they're on it.
I believe
that's a characteristic of success.
It absolutely is. Yeah, just taking that initiative and realizing that you can't, whatever was holding you back previously is not going to help you catapult into the future. And you have to define your success as well, of what that means to you, and if you prefer a more quiet, less front-facing role, then maybe real estate isn't for you, or entrepreneurship. So speaking of that, let's get into TCing. And how did you, at what point did you catch your stride as a TC? Did you know, you did a few for that first agent and now you're like, oh, this could be a thing. But then at what point did you feel like, no, this is a thing. This is my thing?
I would say in 2018. I think at that time I had other clients, but I just remember it was like, okay, let me really formalize this. Like, let me treat it like a real business. Invest in structure in my business, whether, I did an LLC instead of, I decided to do an LLC, invest in the systems, because for the longest time, even with my top producing client, like she would give me like 13 deals in a month. Oh, wow. And I was still using like a binder and checklist, which I kind of miss that. Like I do, like I actually like to see it and, check it, but I need automations as you get busier. It helps that I did so many things manually initially to appreciate the automations that I have now and to understand like the whys behind how it's helping my business and how it's helping my clients.
I can definitely relate to the paper pushing, physical paper pushing.
Yeah, like binder.
Yeah.
I actually, to be honest, but the only reason why I don't do that now is for the automations. But even back then, like I would manually put put the dates in the calendar and like send her a meeting invite for the important dates. Now I have my TC Docs does that, so I don't have to do that anymore. It's just so many different automations that I have now that I didn't have then, but I appreciate that journey of figuring out that I needed to do that, or or whatever. It's crazy how you start your business, because this is before the groups and
yes,
you
I feel
know,
like
all
those
of
just
that.
kind of really took off in the like since the pandemic. I
I
would
kind
say
of
like
feel that way
2020, like I got more interest in TCing and people asking me questions around 2020, just in the last 2 or 3 years. Whereas
Yeah,
before, I think,
19, 20. Yep,
mhm.
I think so too.
Because it felt
But
I felt kind of lonely in the first couple of years of my business. I was just like,
yeah,
just gonna
me
do
too.
this, working from home, and
In 2020, it was like after I experienced the pandemic and after I saw how blessed I felt to have
right,
the TV business during that time,
right,
that's when I really became called to offer the coaching by way of the playbook,
yes,
because I was like more like my demographic. I mean, I have men that have taken the course, but my main target is women, that can relate to me. And I was just like, man, I got 99 problems, but trying to figure out what I'm going to do with these kids after the school just called me and told me that they're not coming to school indefinitely.
oh, I know.
Like
That's
we got a call
again
on
figuring it
Friday
out.
and they did not go back to school for another year and a half or another
Wow,
school
wow.
year. Like we finished that school year and then there was a whole nother school year that they did not go to school. And it was just such a relief to not have to really uproot and change my whole process in life
Yeah.
to accommodate that.
You had it established already. And I like that you brought up automation. So a frequently asked question I get is, well, how did you know to have this template? Or how did you know to follow this timeline? And one, my years of experience working at a real estate office helps. Finding a mentor or someone to just answer those questions for you. What are some, or just give me a couple of your productivity hacks that have helped you in the last, I'd say, a couple years to really save time or just feel like you're not as in the file as much as you used to versus when you were doing things with paper. Because like I said, I would do everything pretty much online, but when it came to the checklist, there was something about me
Yeah,
physically, manually, like with a pen, ink to the
yeah.
paper. But then once I embraced, and I just recently embraced, I use TC Docs as well. I'm not committed. I'm just open to whatever programs work well for me. But right now it is TC Docs. And for me, that has been a game changer in the last couple of years for my business and
Yeah.
even my own time management. I feel like I became a much better TC in the last 2 years than I have in the last 15 years before that. It's almost embarrassing. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys.
Well, they're marketing more things to us, and we have
Right.
like more automations. For me, one thing that my mentor always tried to get me to do, which I still have trouble with this, but I've gotten a lot better, even though just like the last 6 months, is inbox zero method.
Oh,
Um,
that's tough.
I don't know, like I think I mentioned it, like when she was mentoring me up until like last year, like I had access to her email, like she shared her email with
Yes.
me. And so I would see emails as they come in because I was kind of a hybrid at first this is before we knew what a TC was. Obviously
Right.
now we have boundaries in our business so where we're not an assistant and a TC, but she's like my girl too. So I'm like,
Real quick. You
yeah,
said you said the magic words. Well, yes, boundaries, but TCs and assistants are two different jobs. We
absolutely.
don't have to get into too much of that
Right.
today, but I just wanted to stop and point that out because I think that's a misconception in our world and with realtors, because when they get hired on, they're told, oh, just hire a TC. They're like your assistant. And that's not the case. So
Right.
thank you for bringing that up. I will definitely cover that in future podcasts as well. You could
Yeah.
come back on and we could talk about that alone.
Yes,
But for
absolutely.
now, I just definitely wanted to stop you.
For her, I was hybrid. I was doing some assistant stuff, like, managing, not so much managing her emails, but just even having access to her emails. Like, I don't need access to your emails.
Right. And it's not that you can't do both. I just want
Right,
people to understand that they are two completely different jobs.
right,
Because one day you could be picking up cleaners for them as an assistant, and then
right.
later that night you're
handling contracts.
handling contracts. So
Yeah.
just keep in mind that you have to differentiate the two of them before you just dive right in, unless
Right.
that's what you want.
Decide which one or both that you're going to do and how much you're going to charge and all of that good stuff.
All of that, right.
But yeah, but she was inbox zero. So like, because I had access to her email, as soon as she would see an email and like, I guess in her mind, address it or just acknowledge it, like if it's an acknowledgement email, like I would see it. And then 2 minutes later, I'll come back on like, oh, let me see that email. It's gone because she immediately moved it to the proper folder. So
Oh, gotcha.
what I would do when I first started working with her, she taught me to, we like to use Outlook. I have Gmail, G Suite, but I like to use Outlook for visual purposes. I don't like the platform for Gmail. So we would create a folder with the address nomenclature on there.
Mhm.
And then we would also have a folder per month. So January,
okay.
whenever we see an email and once we've addressed it, I would just drag that email to the address folder. Well, now I pay Folio. Gmail has a real estate software called Folio. I pay them like $14 a month just to do that. They have other functions, like you can actually use Folio similar, I think, to how you use TC Docs, but it's not robust.
Right.
So I don't use it for that. I simply use it because what it does is
Inbox management.
Yeah, and it's an intuitive, smart software. So what it does is when you create the smart folder, you put in the address and stuff, and you put in the parties and the deal. As soon as it sees anything with those items, with that address, with the party's name or something that they pick up on, it intuitively puts that folder in that, or puts that email into the proper folder. Now so now when I see it in my inbox and I address it, I can just archive it instead of dragging it anywhere.
Right.
I still don't fully trust it, so I do check sometimes. Like it's just my mind is like, okay, did it take it?
Are we sure?
Right. But it's helpful because it's just like, okay, now I can just archive it. It helps me to have it. I just learned about archiving like last year because I'm like thinking you have to do. So that's why I would have a million things still in my inbox because I'm scared to delete it or I'm scared but if you archive
you're gonna forget about it.
Yeah. But if you archive it, even if you did forget about it, if you archive it and you remember, if they like, oh, I sent you an email last week, then you can just search that person's name in the archive and it'll be there, But then also the folio is an extra backup to knowing that it's in the proper folder. So that's one thing that I use that I like, that I used to be manual with. The other thing is calendar management is a part of what we do for our agents.
Very important.
We're not, at the end of the day, the agent still needs to know what's going on with their transactions and be responsible for those dates. But we're there to kind of help with tools to help remind them, whether it's a reminder email, as well as having it on the calendar. So TC Docs did not have this previously. They just added this in the last couple of years, where it has a Google Calendar integration. So now I no longer have to separately, as a separate task, put in these dates in the calendar. It automatically does it when I set the task up and when I onboard the transaction. So that's been a time saver and a hack as well.
I think those two.
Yeah, like
I think, as TCs, it's important to have your own transaction management platform outside of what a brokerage provides to you. I don't know if you've heard of SkySlope or
which I love.
I think SkySlope is great, but it's not as TC friendly as like a TC Docs would be, or any other TC specific platform. So even just listening to you speak, I'm like, I don't think I'm using all the features like I should be. So I'm going to go do some research after this and see where I could.
There are some. What I like about, and this isn't I don't know, this isn't we don't get paid for talking about TC Docs, everybody.
I know, that's why I'm trying not to like mention them too much.
Yeah.
But that's why I said I'm willing to change if I need to.
Yeah. The other ones I've tried, I love what they offer, but it was so hard to set it up. I spent like $100 by allowing free trials to go past the trial date trying to set those things up several times, like over several, like it can be a year later and I'm trying to, okay, I'm gonna try it again.
Yeah.
And it's just so hard to set up. Like when I set something up, I'm ready to get started like within the next day.
I'll give it a weekend tops. And that's basically where and I'm not spending 24 hours on it, but it's like the couple hours allowed. I'm the same. And that's kind of where I landed. So it's not so much like exactly. So it's not so much that everyone should be using that specific company. It's more so when you are shopping as a TC for your own transaction management platform, go with what is easy for you to set up and what speaks to you. And if you're not,
you can always change it.
You can always change it over. Exactly. You could do the month-to-month payment or commit to 1 year. Thank you for bringing that up as well, because I think a lot of TCs aren't aware that stuff matters. You know, you don't have to pick it because I told you or because Courtney said it. Like, you pick what works for you. And I spent a weekend doing like 3 different trials at once.
Yeah, and I was like, which one was you finished you finished the
I
one
finished the trials. Yeah.
Exactly. You finished it and had what you needed in place by the time it was over.
Right.
As opposed to the other ones where you're still trying to figure out, one thing. So that's what turned me off from the other one as well. So I can totally relate.
Yeah, definitely keep that in mind, TCs or anyone working in
I was going to add, and don't feel like you need to sign up for any of them until you are making money in your business.
Yes.
Use paper checklists until you're getting, I would say, consistently 6 and up, and even 6 is still kind of, but I mean, consistently 5 or 6 a month, then I don't really, and it's not that, well, some of them do cost a lot, but
you can do month to month.
Yeah, some of them are like $65 to $70 a month. That's one of the cheaper ones. And even though it sounds cheap, if you're not making, if you're not consistently and like have really solidified and like really decided that you're going to do this like a real business, then just use the paper checklist until you get to that point.
I agree. And I didn't start using a TC management platform until the last year and a half. And I broke out and did my own business in 2018. So keep in mind, like that's a great point, Courtney. Thank you for sharing that, because don't feel pressure to spend money on things right away. Like I grew with my business. I like to say I grow as I go. And, I got started. First thing I got was a laptop.
Yeah.
Let me just start there. I'm going to invest and keep it, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial advisor, nothing, but keep in mind, if you are running this as a business, these things are also tax write-offs. So in a way, it pays for itself over time, and you're still going to be saving money in a sense. So definitely get yourself a good accountant to explain all that to you, but you don't. Thank you. So thank you for saying that. You do not have to buy everything or get everything set up from day one. You need to figure out if you are actually committed to this job and this world first. And build that consistent flow of business and clientele and your roster, because your roster is not always going to have business coming to you. So that's why it's important to constantly be networking and communicating and setting yourself up in a way that's marketable, but also beneficial to you personally. You don't have to sign up for everything all at once. So don't feel pressure as a new entrepreneur to dive straight in and get the LLC or get the office space or get the automation all set up at once. Like, grow with your business, listen to your budget, because you're going to need to know how to also budget and reallocate money differently than when you were at a 9-to-5. Because when you're working a 9-to-5, you have those checks coming in consistently. I mean, there's no guarantee with any job. You could get laid off or fired or quit overnight, but at the same time, budgeting as an entrepreneur is different than someone working a job. So how did you determine what you were going to charge for your services and the services that you were going to offer? Are you still kind of working around, working that out, or?
No, so when I first started, like I said, my one client, who's my mentor, she decided to pay me $350. She didn't even ask me. She just started to pay me. So I didn't give her this amount. But when I decided to offer it to other people, I did do a little bit of research and saw that was kind of in line. I think I started off though when I opened it to other clients, I think I started off at $375, if I'm not mistaken. And again, I just got that from kind of researching, because like I said, I don't know when I found out that the TC was a thing. Like, I don't know if I Googled real estate assistant. Like, I don't know what I did to make me finally that aha moment go off, like, oh, I do this already.
Yeah.
At that time is when I was like, okay, well, how much let me do some research on that amount.
Yes.
I have since raised my rates. So my rate now is $400 a transaction, which is pretty much
That's average. Yeah.
I tell my students too, I don't believe in starting off cheaper just because you're new. You're investing in your education by having a coach who's me. So you've invested in that. I've taught you the basics of what you need to know. And from here, you should be able to know what you don't know so that you can build on that knowledge. You're ready. You're more than ready to start accepting clients by the time you're done with the course. So I don't believe, I get this question a lot is, should I start off cheaper? Should I offer one for free? No.
No.
No. You should, in my course, I also teach them how to talk in a discovery call. Like, to me, that was always my biggest concern as a business owner when I first started. Just getting out of that employee mindset to business owner was, how do you talk? What do you say on a call? Like, so when I was working with my mentor as a real estate agent, I would go to her office and like sit with her and listen to how she handled a call. And that gave me more confidence because she's asking them, so, more than what's your budget? How much money do you have saved? Do you have a 401? Like, to me, they could come across intrusive. But you as a business owner who doesn't want your time wasted and you're educating as well, you have an end game to these questions. You're not just trying to be nosy. Right. But it was the style in which she did it. It was conversational. It wasn't an interview style like how I'm saying it, but she did get those questions answered. Yeah. And even as PCs, we have to get those questions answered because not about budget, obviously, but about expressing what your fees are in as a matter of fact way. Yes, this is the fee. No, we don't offer any discounts. And being okay with being firm.
These are my hours.
Yeah,
the days
your boundaries, and but it's just a part of the conversation. So understanding how the conversation should sound, and so I offer actual recordings of real conversations. Like, I've recorded real calls, discovery calls that I've had, because that takes a lot of stress out to just hear what kind of stuff am I supposed to be saying? So I used to be nervous about.
It can feel very broad and
so just understanding, how to actually ask a question, like, so what would you say is your pipeline, or how's business going, and just knowing how to just be quiet and listen, and then how to kind of follow up with that, or it's not like it's a dance, and that's just with anything. Just being able to have a conversation where you're not selling, you're attracting. So that's before you get them on the phone, you're attracting with your marketing and things like that. You're not selling it. If an agent feels like $400 a transaction is not worth it to them or too much, then that's not my ideal client. And, and that's fine.
That's simple.
But that's just what it is, because their mindset isn't where they find enough value in what we offer.
Exactly. Cheap doesn't necessarily mean better either. So you have to stand firm. And if you are going to charge that low, you still want to give 100% quality work.
I have a story about that. So the brokerage that I hang my license with, we have an internal Facebook group, and I am an affiliate. Like, I can market and things in there, but like they didn't. I wasn't the only one that they allowed to do that. So there was an agent who, after I'm known as the TC company, like, people know me because I'm always adding value in the group. I'm not always selling my stuff, but I'm always responding to questions and adding value.
Yes.
So she just out of nowhere comes with her marketing stuff, and she's charging like $250 a transaction. She worked nights and weekends, like just no boundaries. And I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna? I mean, part of me was like, how am I gonna compete? But another part was like, I'm not gonna compete because I'm not working nights and weekends, and I'm not lowering my price. So I had clients that called. I talked to that day. Like one of my clients, she was like, I saw that, and she was like, but just like you said, you get what you pay for. She's like, I believe you get what you pay for, and no, I wouldn't leave just for price, and so that's the kind of loyalty and clients that you want, but you only get that when you're offering a superb service too, so you have to give to get as well.
I could not agree more. Because
Yeah.
I've worked with clients that, well, can you just give me a discount the first couple of deals? And this is early on in my journey, and I would say yes.
Yeah.
And my work, the quality was fine, but it would be their attitude. They thought they were entitled.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the entitlement, it was the disrespect, it was, well, I'm checking my email now, so I need to talk to you. Attitude.
Right.
And I'm like, it's 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. I'm not doing that.
Right.
I responded to this email
To
at
let you know.
10 a.m. to let you know that this is the update.
Right.
It's pretty specific. Right. So like you said, it's a dance, but it's a dance battle sometimes.
Yeah. And that's why you have the discovery call, so that you can feel. And then also just, we all have to learn about boundaries. Like that's a part of the course as well, is just boundaries. But my story is, here in Atlanta, we have what's called a due diligence period. Every market doesn't have that, where a buyer can terminate for any reason or no reason at all. They can wake up, if it's before due diligence, and say they don't want it. They can terminate and get their earnest money back, whether or not they did an inspection or whatever.
Right.
So a part of what that gives the buyer a lot of leverage. So when you're working with the buyer's agent, they're responsible for, if there was an inspection, for getting an amendment to address concerns to the seller with well enough time before the due diligence period ends, because the seller is going to be more apt to do those things if it's within due diligence. If it's after that, they can say no, and then the buyer can't get their earnest money back. But if they get that report during the due diligence period and they say no, then the buyer can walk, and the seller doesn't want that. So anyway, it's a strategic thing. And so very early on, when I first started accepting other clients, and again, I had been doing this for my mentor because I didn't know any better too, about the boundaries, because I didn't have a business. I was just helping her.
Right.
She was a friend, became a friend over time as well. And so like, I remember I would wake up out my sleep like, oh my God, did we send out the ATAG? And it's like, that's not our job. So anyway, but luckily, my mentor was on top of it anyway. Like, she, even if I did forget, like, she would. So anyway, this agent, I'm opening a business to other people. And she's like, well, I feel so all of our amendments end at 11:59 p.m. So like, whatever you're gonna do, you need to terminate or something by then, so that you can protect the buyer's earnest money. So I remember the conversation. She's like, well, I just feel like, you should be the one, if we don't get it back by 11:45, then you need to send out the termination. And it's like, she's like, I just feel like, that's a part of it. And I didn't agree with her, but I didn't know what to say. So I was like, okay, I did it. And then after that is when I made my rules about, we're 9 to 6. If something happens over the weekend, or as a matter of fact, now I don't even do the ATAC anymore. Like that's the one amendment that we don't do because it's too time sensitive.
Right.
And,
it could go on all night.
We'll help you with non-time sensitive amendments, but we're not going to be like, as an agent, they still have their responsibilities.
Right.
It doesn't fall on the TC. So that's about learning about boundaries.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. It's just, boundaries are so important, and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, you must communicate that.
Yeah.
And even if you're working with someone and you've established a relationship and maybe 2 years into it, you have a change of heart, have that conversation with them and
Right.
update them on where you're at. Like, oh, well, I'm actually eliminating this as a service, but,
Yep.
or
That's what I did.
I'm
Yeah.
adding this on as a service. And that's, that's you doing your due diligence too, as an entrepreneur and as a, TC, and being responsible and accountable for all of that. Communication is just, it's ongoing. It's never
And to
ending.
me, I've learned this in both businesses, real estate sales and the TC business. The quickest way to lose a client or to get a bad perception
Mm-hmm.
is unmet expectations.
Yes.
Because you didn't say something when one of my real estate sales, I had some buyers that had relocated here from another state. I found them a home. They came, they loved it. They purchased a home. 2 years later, they wanted to sell that home and buy a new house. I'm like, great. So they called me up like, yeah, we're ready to do that. I did not do the normal sit down with them, listing appointment, walk through, discuss everything that's going to happen. I didn't do that with them because I'm like, oh, they called me and,
Right.
I just told them, oh, well, I have a photographer there next week and we'll get it listed. That's it. That was the hardest deal because they had these expectations that I was going to be doing certain things. Like I would have been able to tell them like, open house, we'll do that if necessary, but it's not necessarily something that is a top priority. This is how we're going to market the house. This is what you can expect. This is what the homes are staying on the market for in your area, so that they're not thinking that because it's been there for 5 days that it's a problem. Just every little thing. And I learned that it was unmet expectations. Like not only did I sell their house, I saved the deal. Like the buyer's financing fell through. I got them a new lender, and got them closed.
Yeah.
And I did a lot. I did a great job, knock on wood. But because of unmet expectations, they did not buy their next house with me. The house that they ended up buying, not with me. And they set me down and was like, we just feel like you didn't work as hard as you did for us on the buyer side. But the buyer side is a whole different set of circumstances.
But they don't know that.
They don't know that because I didn't explain that, and it was my fault. So that taught me, just even with the TC side, when you have your discovery, I find I don't like talking on the phone, but I don't just have it where a stranger could just send me a contract. I need to have the discovery call so that you can understand how we work, what to expect, what we handle, what you handle, our expectations for you as the agent. It's a 15 or 20-minute call. It doesn't have to be long, but that way you've covered what you needed to cover. So there's no hard feelings. There's no surprises. When they ask you to send out the ATAC and you then have to tell them, oh, well, we don't do that. That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't. You have to lay it out all up front. I love that. I love that. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Just a couple more questions, but I have a segment called The Keys. And basically I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here is one of my slogans. And you've given us so many keys this entire episode, and I thank you for that again. But what is a key you could share with upcoming TCs, or maybe they're a year in, but they haven't found their footing? What is some advice or courses that you want to share with the audience and where they should start?
So I would say for me, like I mentioned earlier, I'm like heavy on Facebook for research purposes and stuff. So there are some great groups on Facebook. I don't know if we can mention them on here, but you can just search transaction coordinator and it should direct you to the different groups. Join all of them because there are gems to be dropped in all of them. And I feel like they don't gatekeep information. Everybody's so helpful. Secondly, I have a group as well on Facebook, the Work From Anywhere movement on Facebook. You can follow that. That group, though, is for really, really newbies, like almost people that are interested. Their curiosity is piqued about the whole TC industry, but they're like very new. So you may or may not, if you've already been in the business. And then also, I do offer a group coaching course called the TC Playbook. And in it, we use my framework called the Blitz method. So by the end of the course, you will have your business branded, legitimized. So that means your structure will be set up. We'll go over mindset. Imagination to mindset is, or imagination to manifestation is the name of that module, where, like we talked about earlier, it sounds very new agey. Everybody's talking about mindset right now, but I can't stress the importance of it, of having your firm why in place, having things align with how you want your life to look, and really imagining and focusing on what your life looks like ideally.
Right.
So anyway, so we go over that, and then we get into the nitty gritty with the T in Blitz, which is techniques and tools. We use actual contracts from a TC standpoint, what it is that a TC needs to look for when they first receive a contract. And then, we have a real estate jargon journal. So all of the words that I'm mentioning, like ATAC and, COE, close of escrow, and just all of this stuff, which, by the way, somebody said COE to me like last year, and I'm like, what is that? Because we don't call it that here. But, so all of those types of words, so that you're not going into it cold and looking crazy when you're trying to work with a new client when you're brand new. And then the final one is systems. So like the systems that we talked about today, whether it's free or paid, because I believe you should start off with free systems. So we have all of the templates and things like that, email templates. And then I also have a separate part, which is CAST, which is client attraction systems and techniques, where you can hear discovery calls and understand like how to have a discovery call and how to market it to attract clients. So I do have that. And Google is your best friend as well. Yes. Look on Google to see what people are charging for TC services in your area, so that you can understand, how much you want to charge. It's really easy to kind of, going back to the imagination to manifestation, it's easy to kind of map out how much you want to make as a TC, because if you charge $400 a transaction, how many you need to do to be six figures. I think you only need like 8 a month to get to a really great,
to a good number. Yeah.
Good number. So, when you're thinking about imagination to manifestation, think about how much you want to make and how many, deals you need to get a month, and how you're going to go. Then you reverse engineer into how you're going to get to that point. So
that's perfect.
Yeah, so
that was perfect. Thank you. And then what is one goal you don't mind sharing publicly today to kind of keep yourself accountable in the next 12 months?
So my goal, for me, we talked about how the TC stuff has been coming up a lot, like over the last 3 years.
Yes.
And I say that to say, over the last 3 years, especially since the pandemic, but even prior to that, like, real estate was simple. Our agent clients were just getting a buyer, getting them under contract, sending us the contracts. Like, if you sell real estate, you weren't having a hard time with buyers because the interest rates, it's not that the interest rates were so low, because prior to the pandemic, they were probably about where they are now, maybe in the 4s. But then the pandemic had artificially low interest rates. So now, even though the interest rates aren't necessarily that high, they're so much higher than they were when they were artificial. And so buyers are getting cold feet. So it's really affecting the whole market. Yeah. And so if it affects the real estate market, it's going to affect us as TCs, because our clients aren't bringing in as many contracts and things like that. And so what we're having to do, not only ourselves, but our real estate clients, we've got to get back to the basics. Mm-hmm. And that means whether it was door knocking when you were fresh and hungry as a real estate agent, then that's what you need to go back to doing. Yeah. Cold calling, prospecting. And for us as TC business owners, the same thing goes. Like, I have a TC mentor who has a multi-million-dollar business. And she's like, you gotta pick up the phone and call your clients. And that is the hardest thing for me to do. Whether we're in the contract together, doing it at the same time, just calling us, say, hey, or after, or if I haven't talked to them in a while. Like for years, it didn't really matter because there was somebody else knocking on my door to send me.
It was just flowing. And now it's like
now it's
flowing
not
down.
So you have to, again, realign yourself. Okay, well, if I know I need to get 8 deals a month, I can't just sit here and just twiddle my thumbs or just take what I have in front of me.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I have to do what I need to do to bring more fresh business in. And it's the simplest thing for some is to just call people up. But for people like me, that is not simple.
And me.
It is not simple. It's free. It don't cost nothing, but it's like I always got a million other things that I could put in front of that.
Oh,
and it's not getting me new business. So the good thing is my mentor said that it can be text message. Long as it was
some form of
ping-pong conversation, then it counts. So my goal is to do more communicating with my existing clients, past clients, and really making it a part of my business plan every week. So it sounds hard. I mean, it sounds easy, but that is like my big goal.
Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, because I can definitely relate to that. I'll go start a whole podcast before I have to make phone calls.
Exactly.
I'll get on YouTube and make videos and go live.
And then let me just send you this video.
Yeah.
Instead of calling you,
right.
And it's like,
right.
I think it has to do with just, my introverted nature, which.
Yeah. The stories we tell ourselves and.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
yeah. But as a transaction coordinator, that's also why we do a lot of, we don't mind being behind the scenes, because we just want to just put our head into work and just do that. But that's just a small part when you're also the business owner. Like if you become a TC working for somebody else, that's fine. Yeah. But if you're responsible for also generating business, you've got to do more than just the work. It's not about the work.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And that was a perfect ending to a wonderful conversation. I will put all of Courtney's information, the links to your courses, her website, in the description of this episode. But Courtney, thank you so much for your time and sharing. I would, if all works out, we'll have you back on in the future for future episodes. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So where can people follow you on social media? What's the best way to, or the best place you would like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on social media, you can follow either at Work From Anywhere Movement or ATL Courtney Rozier, Rozier. My website is www.thetcplaybook.com for the course. For any agents out there looking for a TC, you can find us on Instagram at Time Freedom TC.
Amazing. And just remind the audience what states you currently TC for as well.
Absolutely. Currently, I'm open to every state except for California. But currently,
California.
Right. Definitely California. Currently, we have clients in Texas, Florida, Georgia, of course, and Illinois. But we're open to other states as well. We can handle pretty much any state except California.
Or not yet.
I don't know. We're going to refer those to you.
Teamwork.
Right.
Well, thank you again, Courtney. This was so much fun. I am very grateful for your time and just your journey, your story. I think a lot of people in this industry are going to relate, especially the moms out there that are interested either in this career or just not sure where to take off or get started. So definitely hit up Courtney for more information to learn about how she's rocking it in this real estate world and how we can all grow together. But until then, head to transactioncarepodcast.com to stream this episode and other episodes, and care for yourself, Care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.